Welcome to Gestalt IT. My name is Tom Hollingsworth, and I'm here talking tech with my friend Tim Bertino.
Hey Tom, thanks for having me. This is Tim Bertino. I am co-host of the Art of Network Engineering podcast.
One of my favorite podcasts. Keep up all the good work over there.
Appreciate that.
So what's exciting to you in tech right now?
So Tom, while I know this isn't a security field day, something that's been near and dear to my heart is network segmentation. Okay. And network segmentation has obviously been very prevalent lately with things like ransomware attacks. I think that oftentimes when there are issues like that happen, if someone gets into a network and they compromise a system, if all they're able to do, if all that system is able to do to talk to one specific thing and not the entire network, that can be seen as a win. So what I think is interesting is that for so many years it was on the network infrastructure side, it was let the switches switch, let the routers route, and bring in other security technologies to handle everything else. And I think there's been a shift in that, well, the network infrastructure, the routers and switches are there, let's have them be a security enforcement point.
So just to back up the truck a little bit for our friends out there that may not be networking savvy, we're not talking about segmenting the network like from a broadcast domain or from a collision domain perspective by using the hardware that you mentioned, routers and switches. We're talking about fundamentally changing the way that systems talk to each other. In essence, creating these access control lists on a per device or even on a per user basis so that someone isn't just able to talk to something on the network without having prior authorization, right?
100%. I do think that things like VLANs and dynamic VLANs can still play a part for things like automated remediation. We just want to get this thing segmented quickly. But to your point, yes, I think it is more dynamic profiling of devices and users on the network, and then using the network to push things like dynamic ACLs and scalable group tags and that kind of thing for sure.
And so a lot of the time in the past that we had to do this, we had to use things like VLANs to kind of do traffic segmentation because we really didn't have a way to do it otherwise. Because thank you Ethernet for being the chattiest protocol on the planet, but it also is the one that we managed to go with. But what you're saying now is that because we have so many more software-enabled devices throughout the network, we can do the kinds of posture interrogation or the kinds of security checks that we need to do to say, you, Tim, as this member of this group have access to these files, but only at these certain times or only from these certain locations. So it sounds to me almost like we're creating not only kind of posture management from the old days of BYOD, but also this continuous authentication mechanism where I can continually re-verify, hey, you're coming to me from a coffee shop this time. Well, I'm going to restrict the things that you have access to because you're in an area that is not as secure as your desk inside of an office.
Absolutely, and that's part of the, not to throw buzzwords around, but that's definitely part of the zero trust methodology. And what I think is interesting about that is we talk about the network being an enforcement point is one of the acronyms is ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Architecture, where I think it needs to be taken a step further because it's all well and good if the network can apply policy, but you also need to understand what that policy should be. And I think that's what's really difficult is you bring in a new technology, a new application, and who knows what that thing's doing or supposed to do. Maybe there's good documentation, maybe not. Maybe it's an IoT device and it's really just doing something out to a SaaS platform, but there could be some more in the weeds things that it has to do within the network, and you have to find some way to figure that out. So I think there already are some players in this space, but in more buzzwords, maybe this is where AI can help too in using the network not just as an enforcement point, but also as an ingestion point to be able to look at data and then in turn suggest policy so the engineers don't have to necessarily spend their time trying to figure that out.
So would you say that ZTNA in effect does require some form of network segmentation in order to be able to operate at best capacity?
Absolutely. I do think that network segmentation is really a cornerstone to zero trust.
And by having these dynamic aspects to it where policy can be created on the fly, whether it be by engineers or by suggestion of heuristics or whatever, does it really enable networking admins to create better outcomes for their users? Like you said, preventing the spread of ransomware, or malware throughout a network? Or could it even just make their lives easier by saying, oh, well, we've onboarded Tim into the network, and here is the list of things that you need to be able to access, so the system creates that policy on the fly when you log in, so you don't have to worry about, oh, well, hey, I can't do my job today because you guys never gave me access to this server.
That's an interesting concept. I think I'll draw a parallel to when we started talking about network automation. Oh, network automation's coming for our jobs. Well, not really. It's allowing us to be able to drive the business forward as network admins, network engineers, so we're not just seen as a cost center. Shove the stuff to the side, let the automation handle what we don't want to have to do on a daily basis. I do think that could be similar on the security side as well.
And I like that, because one of the things that we've always seen over the years is that the network team and the security team are kind of at odds sometimes. In essence, the network's design is to just let the packets go where they need to go, and the security team's design is, well, the opposite. Don't let the packets go anywhere. The most secure network is the one that doesn't pass packets. But by maybe creating this kind of synergy between the two teams, what you're in essence saying is that you're trying to make life easier for everybody. The security team obviously can deliver necessary controls to the right spot as quickly as possible, and the network team no longer has to worry about the security team buggering something up because, oh, look, we put deny IP any into that access list, and now suddenly everything stops working.
Absolutely, and you brought up an interesting point too on onboarding. So device onboarding can be very difficult in a zero trust or like closed authentication, if we want to talk Cisco speak. That makes it difficult, and you need a way to be able to profile devices and make sure that they are what you think they are, and then get the proper policy.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we see, especially in the IoT realm, is we have a class of device, whether it's an insulin pump or a camera, and it has a certain traffic characteristic, and we want to make sure that it can do those things, but only those things. Insert the part where you remember that a casino got hacked through a fish tank thermometer, depending on when you watch this video, some years ago. But that was one of the things. It was a primary case that we heard from a lot of people who were pushing some of this early zero trust architecture, was by profiling the devices and ensuring we know their traffic patterns, or by having a database that has those patterns, we can prevent them from, the point of sale system talking to something that it shouldn't. Again, cue the apocryphal Target hack at this point. But do we see that maybe AI or some other form of advanced machine learning can help us gather those statistics faster and maybe take people out of the loop enough that we can onboard these devices quickly without potential for human error?
I think that has to happen. I think it has to happen where the human element has to be at least somewhat removed from it so they can do other things. Otherwise, that's going to be all that they're doing. At the end of the day, it's about reducing and minimizing and mitigating risk. You're never going to take it to zero, but with doing things like adopting zero trust network architectures and network segmentation, you're going to get a lot closer.
And even if you have some risk, you can contain it to areas where that could be potentially risky. I mean, we do this today in things like demilitarized zones between public-facing access and private access. So we haven't mitigated risk. We've just, put it in a nice little box somewhere.
Absolutely.
So, Tim, what does the future of network segmentation look like?
I'm going to draw the parallel again to network automation. I do think that to drive adoption of segmentation in a meaningful way in enterprise organizations, I think you need technologies that can automate away some of that and take that burden off of people spending time on it. And again, I do think AI probably has a component of that, because the network sees all that data. If you have some sort of technology that can analyze it and be able to create benchmarks and then eventually policy, I think that's where the industry is going to have to go.
Well, Tim, thanks for stopping by and talking tech with us. We really appreciate it.
Make
sure you check out gestaltit.com for more great tech talks like this, as well as other great content that we've created with our community of influencers. We hope to see you again soon for another great conversation.